Hello, I'm Nigel Crowther, and today I'm going to give you a demonstration of Watson Code Assistant for Red Hat Ansible Lightspeed. So that's quite a mouthful, so I'm going to break that down into two constituent components, which are Ansible and Watson Code Assistant. So let's start with Ansible. Ansible is an open source software that automates software provisioning, configuration management, and application deployment. So in other words, it's a simple language based on YAML that allows you to set up hosts, whether that's Unix or Windows, to essentially build the infrastructure up. So that's creating firewalls, users, installing software, and so on. Ansible's got 31% of the market share. It's ranked number 2 after Terraform, and the market's worth hundreds of millions of dollars per year. And there are hundreds of thousands of Ansible developers. So what is the code assistant? So Watsonx Code Assistant for Ansible uses generative AI to create curated best practices code from prompts you give within the Ansible script. So the main benefits to the customer is increased productivity for the Ansible developers and better quality code as using the best practice examples, and increased speed to develop the script, so you're going to deliver those servers quicker. It improves learning, so if you've got new Ansible developers, they can get up and running much more quickly. And like I said, it's increased quality of the Ansible scripts if you use Code Assistant. So Code Assistant is actually based on Visual Studio Code, and it's a plugin into Visual Studio Code. So we can see here on the left, this is a Visual Studio Code editor, and we're creating suggestions using Ansible Lightspeed. And what's happening, it's actually calling out to the Red Hat Ansible Lightspeed service, which is creating the suggestions using a prompt that's feeding into the Watsonx Code Assistant large language model. So there's 3 steps. There's the editor is calling into the Ansible Lightspeed on the cloud, which is then calling out to the large language model to generate the code. Okay, so now I'm going to show you Ansible Lightspeed in action. So you can see here I've got Visual Studio Code, which is the standard editor these days for developers, including Ansible developers. And I've installed the Ansible plugin from Red Hat. And you can also see here I've got the Ansible Lightspeed activated. So if I just press Get Started here, I can create a playbook with Ansible Lightspeed. And what's very clever about this is it's giving me some prompts. I'm just going to use an example prompt here, which is create an iOS website and create and open the firewall. So if I paste that prompt in and press Analyze, it's going to go off to the large language model and try to understand what I'm trying to do, and then split that up into 2 steps, which are essentially playbook steps within Ansible. So the first step is to create the website and then open up the ports. So I'm happy with that. So I press Generate Playgroup, and immediately see here it's created the Ansible code to build this infrastructure. So I'm just going to press Open Editor, and you can see here we've now got the Ansible script, which I can now save and run. What's also interesting, down the bottom here, I've got an Ansible tab which allows me to check the provenance, or where the code came from. So for this first step, create iOS website, it's telling me it's coming from the Community Windows Galaxy site. So I can click on this site and I can see it's coming from Galaxy, which is essentially the sort of Red Hat curated repository for Ansible code. And you can see here where the Ansible code has come from, the generated code. So this is very useful for governing and controlling best practices and making sure the generated code is correct. Okay, so now I'm going to give you another example. So that was example generated the whole playbook in one go. I'm now going to show you how I can also create playbooks step by step. So what I'm going to do here is open up a template. So this is a template I created earlier, and it's essentially just got prompts for steps within the Ansible that I want to run. So I'm just going to paste that template in here. So what have we got is initially a prompt to prompt for a username and password, which we'll use to install Red Hat Cockpit. And Red Hat Cockpit is a simple web-based management tool for Linux servers. So what we're doing is creating a user for this service and then installing Cockpit, starting the Cockpit, and then adding the users, and then checking the service is up and running. So these are the 5 steps we see here: print credentials, install, start, and then create the user, check if it's running, and print the URL. So these steps are not runnable. They're just essentially comments, prompts, if you like. So what I'm going to do now, using Ansible Lightspeed, is create the code behind these prompts. So all I need to do to create the code is to press return. And what that will do is go off to Ansible Lightspeed, using the large language model, create a sensible code based on the prompt. So in this case, the prompt was print credentials. And you can see here in grey, this is the suggested output provided by Ansible. And if I press tab, it'll then activate the code, and I can accept it, and it looks good to me. So I'm now going to go through these other steps and do the same. So install Red Hat Cockpit. This will again create a suggestion, which is fine. And then it's start Red Hat Cockpit. And again, that's fine. And then for this one here, just to give an example where it doesn't always work, this prompt doesn't get it quite right. So in this case, the suggestion is creating a user and password, but the password is wrong. So it should be a hashed password like we see here. So I'm going to just change that. And the other thing that's wrong is the username itself. It's not wheel, it should actually be the user we prompted at the top, which was name. So I'm just going to correct that mistake as well. And by the way, sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. That's the nature of generative AI. So sometimes you get sort of pseudo-random results. So now we've corrected that, that should work. And then the last 2 steps, check if Cockpit's running. And print the URL. So these 2 should be fine. Okay, so now we're in a state where we can actually run the script. So just double check that looks okay. You can see here all that generated code would take me probably about an hour to do manually, and Ansible Lightspeed's done that within just a few minutes. So if I drop down to a terminal here, run the playbook. So I'm going to put in a username here. Let's just call it Jim, password Jim. And now it's running the playbook on my remote server, which happens to be a Linux server. So what it's going to do is, first of all, pull down the cockpit image, install it, and then add a user called Jim with password Jim to this to the admin users, so that Jim can log in to Cockpit. So there we go. So now we can see it's finished. The URL has been provided. I'm going to open that up and then log in as that user I just created. And you can see that new user has now been accepted. And here we go, I've logged in. Okay, so now let's summarize what's just happened. I was using watsonx Code Assistant for Red Hat Ansible Lightspeed to take a template Ansible script and using Ansible Lightspeed create runnable Ansible code from simple prompts within my template. And this generated over 70 lines of runnable code just by hitting return and getting the Ansible Lightspeed to generate the content. And then I showed you how to run that script to create the cockpit application on my remote server and then create a user so I could log into the cockpit application and run it. So you can see there the power of the tool is essentially to generate high quality content, accelerate the time it creates to create scripts. You can personalize the generation of the code to match your organization's requirements. You can dive into the provenance of the generated code to make sure it's following best practices for the organization. And you can integrate the tool with common editors starting with Visual Studio Code. Next steps, if you wish to take them, would be for a deeper dive demo and then possibly a proof of concept within your organization to show the true value of the tool. Thank you for watching.